In the soft glow of the evening, as I sat in my living room, the sudden buzz of the intercom broke the silence. Brushing away tears, I glanced at the screen to see my mother-in-law and Martha waiting outside. A wave of relief washed over me, thinking they were here to lend a hand. With quick steps, I reached the door and swung it open, only to freeze in surprise. "Please, bring everything inside," my mother-in-law instructed, and a group of people, chirpy and full of energy, who appeared to be movers, made their way in, apologizing as they passed by me. Confused and overwhelmed, I blurted out, "What? What's happening?" My voice must have carried because my son, Roger, rushed down from his room, worry etched on his face. "What's wrong, Mom?" he asked, eyeing the movers who were now swiftly occupying our space with boxes and furniture. I don't know," I stammered, turning to look at him, equally puzzled. Suddenly, the harsh reality was voiced. "We're taking over this house. It's time for you to leave," my father-in-law, Terry, commanded with a firmness that brooked no argument, even as the movers continued their task. Roger's face drained of color. "No, you can't do this. Auntie, don't they know?" he pleaded, his voice barely above a whisper. "This house, it's not Dad's anymore, and it's haunted." The room fell silent as Terry paused and the movers halted, all eyes on Roger, who was now shaking. "My name is Christina, and I'm 39, married to Keith, who is 40 and a dedicated businessman. Keith, the epitome of calmness, doesn't indulge in vices. He's all about work and spending cozy movie nights with me. Our son, Roger, once a regular companion on these family evenings, now found himself busy with middle school, leaving Keith and me reminiscing about the past. Keith often spoke fondly of his school days, proud of his decision to attend a local public high school over the prestigious one where his parents taught. He was a star student, involved in leadership roles and cherished memories with his high school buddy, Terry. "You were a model student, weren't you?" I'd tease him. His response, always with a laugh, was a reminder of simpler, happy times. "Are you enjoying this?" I asked him once during a movie night. "Yes," he replied. Then looking around, he added, "No, it's more than that. It's happiness." He spoke of our home, our family, with a sincerity that warmed my heart. "I have everything I need. A wonderful wife, a lively son," he said, his honesty making me feel cherished. "You meant to say a beautiful wife," I corrected, half joking, half serious. In this unexpected turmoil amidst movers and declarations of eviction, Keith's words echoed, a reminder of the love and unity that made this house a home, haunted or not. I playfully swung my arm towards Keith, and he dodged it with a laugh, affirming, "Yes, having a beautiful wife does indeed make me the happiest." Our current goal is to buckle down and work hard towards paying off our house's mortgage. Keith has arranged our finances in such a way that I can focus on being a stay-at-home mom without the stress of financial burdens weighing us down. I often find myself thinking how fortunate I am to have Keith, a man so considerate and kind as my partner. While we were sitting side by side, lost in the storyline of a DVD, these thoughts warmly filled my mind. Keith frequently shares how content he is with our married life. However, I can't shake off the feeling that his happiness was not as profound before we got married, especially during the times he spent at his parents' home. The tension and strained relationships he has with his family, particularly with his parents and his sister Martha, are evident and point towards underlying issues. The genesis of these issues, from what I've gathered, seems to revolve around Keith's decision to not attend the high school his parents had chosen for him. In contrast, Martha, who is 3 years his senior, complied with all their parents' wishes. She attended the high school they chose for her, maintained the high grades they expected, and even secured a job at a company they approved of. According to Keith, Martha's compliance has made her overly reliant on their parents, leaving her with a diminished capacity to make independent decisions or adapt to unforeseen circumstances. This dependency manifested clearly when Martha ventured into the workforce. Accustomed to operating under explicit instructions, she found herself paralyzed in a work environment that demanded initiative and independence. Her discomfort and inability to adapt led her to resign in less than a year. Subsequently, her parents hurriedly arranged a marriage for her, choosing a husband on her behalf. Despite having a capable son in Keith, they went as far as to adopt my brother-in-law, making him part of their household, a move that puzzled me greatly. I often ponder over the need for Keith's parents to adopt another son when they already had Keith, who was perfectly capable and deserving of their love and attention. Keith's father is an ordinary businessman, yet there seemed an undue emphasis on projecting a certain image, particularly through the education of their children. They stretched their finances to send Keith and Martha to private high schools, a decision Keith attributes to his parents' desire to maintain a facade of affluence and prestige. Keith recounted stories of a wealthy family living near his parents, with a daughter the same age as Martha. The girls spent their childhood playing together, but as they entered elementary school, their paths began to diverge. This story, among others, sheds light on the complex dynamics and pressures within Keith's family, illustrating a pattern of decisions driven more by external appearances than by the well-being and preferences of the family members themselves. She attended a private school and started to drift apart from the other kids in our neighborhood. Keith's parents didn't have any big problems with that family, but they seemed pretty jealous. They worked hard to save money so Martha could go to private school too. Because of this, we often had simple meals at home, but Martha's school lunches were fancy, leading to a strange mix in what we ate. Keith decided he didn't want to deal with the pressure of a private school, so he chose a public high school instead. I think it was a smart choice, but his parents were really upset and started treating him differently. They used to love showing off about Martha's fancy school. When people asked about Keith, they probably felt a bit ashamed to say he went to a public school. They imagined a fancier lifestyle than they needed, which wasn't really better. Keith's family and Martha's, with her 2 kids, rent their house. Renting isn't bad, but I wonder if they could have spent their money better instead of just trying to look good. They borrowed money for Martha's education and are still paying it back. I've never really gotten how they think about money. This also shows up in how they give Christmas gifts. Martha's kids get more than Roger, which doesn't seem fair, especially since they all live together. It's sad to see Roger affected by this too. They also don't like that we own our house, a 3-story place with 4 bedrooms bigger than theirs. They make comments like, "Pretty fancy for a public school family," and say our nice house doesn't suit us. When they visit, they pick on small things like a stain or a scratch on the floor, and say our house isn't that great. Honestly, their attitude is pretty annoying. They don't have to come over if they don't like it here. Keith thinks they act this way because they're jealous. They don't have a lot of money, but we have our own house, even though we're still paying for it. Keith jokes that it's because they always want to look good to others. My brother-in-law probably earns a decent salary, and my father-in-law is still working in his 50s, but their debts slow them down. "Don't worry about it," Keith always says. But when Keith and Roger aren't home, my mother-in-law and Martha come over. Lately, they've started walking around our house while I'm busy in the kitchen. They talk about changing rooms to their liking, which is pretty bold. When I caught them and showed I was annoyed, they just faked a smile and made a snarky comment about me being slow with the tea. I had to ask them to go back to the living room and was shocked when my mother-in-law asked for a spare key. I couldn't give her one, knowing she might snoop around our things. It was strange for them to ask for a key after treating Keith poorly. I told them I'd talk to Keith about the key, and later, we said no over the phone. My mother-in-law was mad, but we made it clear they should only visit when one of us is home. Keith's health suddenly became a concern. He was diagnosed with cancer after some tests, which left us speechless. The cancer was more advanced than we thought. The doctor said he didn't have long without surgery. Our insurance wouldn't cover all the costs, including the hospital bills, living expenses, and our house mortgage. Everything we had built seemed to fall apart. I was scared of losing Keith and worried about our future, feeling completely overwhelmed. I thought about asking my parents for help, but they're no longer with us. And being an only child, I didn't have other family to turn to. So, we decided to ask Keith's parents and Martha for help. We explained Keith's situation and how cancer treatments can work wonders these days. Martha didn't seem to understand how serious it was. and Keith's parents and Martha hesitated to offer financial support. "I remember hearing you've paid off your debts recently," we mentioned, hoping they'd consider helping. "We promise to pay you back. Could you lend us the money for Keith's surgery and hospital stay? The same money you saved for my private school tuition, could we use it now? We'll work hard to repay you," we pleaded with them, desperate for their help. But they refused, saying they had just started enjoying a bit of luxury. I suggested that my life insurance could cover the mortgage if something happened to me, and we could sell the house to repay them. I even offered to write a promise note. Despite our pleas, they remained unmoved. "Why don't you sell the house now?" they suggested. Selling the house was a thought. But after paying off the mortgage, we'd need to make sure there was enough left for Keith's treatment, hospital bills, and finding a new place to live. Keith had been sending money home even when he was single. It seemed only right that they help him now. But no matter how much we begged, their answer didn't change. Keith finally said it was enough, and we left. As we were leaving, my brother-in-law caught up to us and gave us $4,000, apologizing for not having more. He had been contributing to their debt repayments too. "I'll try talking to them again," he promised, asking us not to lose hope. We thanked him for his kindness. "Do you have any other plans?" he asked. "Yes, we're considering selling the house like Martha suggested," I replied, shocked by the reality of the situation. Selling a house isn't easy. It involves a lot of steps and wouldn't be quick enough, especially with Keith's upcoming hospital admission. Plus, we'd need to find somewhere new to live. It's not as simple as it sounds. "It's okay. I know someone who can help," Keith said with a hopeful smile. Over the 3 years since his cancer was found, Keith fought bravely. Even though doctors said he had just a few months, he made many happy moments with us. There were many hospital visits, but we made the best of them. When the doctor told us Keith might not come home again, I called his family. They visited a few times, quickly leaving after a short visit, as if they were just checking on him. I didn't want to think they were only wondering how much time he had left. When it was clear Keith didn't have much time, I called my mother-in-law. "Oh no, that's awful." "We'll hurry," she said, but she sounded unsure and hung up quickly. Despite feeling uneasy, I went back to Keith and our son, Roger, in the hospital room. In the end, only my brother-in-law, coming straight from work, and Keith's good friend Terry, made it to see him. Keith opened his eyes weakly to see us before closing them one last time. My brother-in-law and Terry took care of the funeral stuff while we went home to get things ready. They stayed with Keith, and Terry drove us. We had rushed out in the morning, and by the time we returned, it was already evening. Our breakfast dishes were still out. In the quiet of the evening, I turned on the lights and started looking through a photo album in the living room. Tears began to fall as I picked out a photo for the memorial service. Then the doorbell rang. I wiped my tears and saw my mother-in-law and Martha on the monitor. They hadn't made it in time to see Keith, but they were here now. I went to open the door, ready to greet them. I was shocked when I opened the door and heard my mother-in-law telling people to bring things inside. Movers started walking into our house, apologizing as they went. I was so confused and asked, "What's happening?" Roger ran downstairs, also confused, asking me what was going on. I didn't understand either. "My son's house is now ours." "You need to leave," my mother-in-law said, with my father-in-law organizing the movers as they filled our house with stuff. Roger suddenly got upset and said, "No, this house isn't Dad's now, and it's haunted." When he said this, everything stopped, and everyone looked at Roger. Then Terry walked in, yelling at everyone for bringing stuff into someone else's house without asking. He made such a noise that even the neighbors might have heard. The movers, confused, started taking everything they brought back outside. Then my nephew and his kid showed up, upset about their things being left outside. My brother-in-law was angry. He thought he was helping with a move, but was confused by the situation. In the middle of the chaos, he said he couldn't handle it anymore and wanted a divorce from Martha. He arranged for his and his kids' things to go to his parents' house. He apologized for the trouble and left with the kids, not even looking at Martha. Martha was left crying on the street, and my in-laws didn't know what to do with all the stuff everywhere. Neighbors started watching, making it even more embarrassing. Terry then suggested we move the belongings inside to clear the street. I agreed with Terry, saying it was okay to bring the stuff inside since it was technically their house now. My in-laws looked confused when I said that. So, I explained the whole story. 3 years back, after Keith's parents didn't help us, Keith brought home Terry, who looked pretty tough. Terry owns a real estate business and even gave me his business card. I had heard he was Keith's high school friend, but he looked so tough that I thought he was involved in some scary business. Roger was so frightened that he stayed close to me. Keith noticed me looking worried and laughed, saying Terry might look scary, but he's actually a well-respected businessman. Even Roger seemed to be easing up a bit around him. Terry, despite his serious look, playfully hit Keith on the head, which shocked me, especially since Keith was unwell, but they both just laughed it off. Terry hadn't come to our wedding or visited us at home, which now made sense because Keith had told me stories about his good friend Terry from school. Terry joked about not attending social events because his tough look might scare people, which is why he joked he was still single. As Keith and Terry joked around, it reminded me that this was the Terry Keith had always talked about. I laughed, apologizing for interrupting their moment, noting how Keith always got so lively around him. Roger joked about the importance of a father's dignity, which lightened the mood further. I shared with Terry how Keith had wished he could come to our wedding, and we'd love for him to visit us anytime. Then, Terry got down to business, saying we didn't have much time. He checked every part of the house from each room to the exterior walls and the meter box. After inspecting everything, Terry opened his laptop, typed something, and then showed us the screen. Terry showed us a price for the house that really surprised me. It was much more than what we originally paid. I worried it was too high, especially since our house was pretty old and hadn't been updated in years. There were marks and the wooden floors were worn out. But Terry said not to worry, mentioning how my in-laws were already planning how to use the rooms, meaning they saw it as perfectly livable. Keith reassured me to trust Terry, so I agreed to sell at that price. Terry quickly got some papers out. Then, he mentioned we'd need a new place to live. Among the papers, he also had rental agreements. His plan was to buy our house and then rent it back to us. This solved our problems all at once. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Terry promised to transfer the sale money to us soon, which we could use to pay off our mortgage. He was so confident, and his smile made him look more friendly than scary. While signing the papers, I saw the rent was listed as $400. Keith, Roger, and I thought it was a typo, expecting it to be $4,000. But Terry corrected us, saying it was no mistake. He felt he owed Keith a lot. Keith didn't think so, but Terry shared stories from their school days. Terry used to get into a lot of trouble back then, which upset his mom a lot. Once, his mom, who raised him alone, ended up in the hospital from too much stress and tiredness. When Terry got to the hospital and saw his mom looking so weak, he realized his actions were causing her stress. He broke down, feeling really guilty, and decided to change. He stopped getting into fights and stayed away from trouble. But then someone found a cigarette butt on the school's roof that had started a small fire. Everyone thought Terry did it because of his reputation, even though he didn't. The school wanted to kick him out, and Terry was scared of upsetting his mom again. Keith was the only person who believed Terry didn't do it. Keith was actually the student council president, and they hadn't really talked much before this happened. Keith stood up for Terry, went to the principal to defend him, and even found the person who actually caused the fire. Terry was grateful because Keith's help meant he could finish high school, take care of his mom, and later start his own business. That's why Terry felt he owed Keith a lot. After sharing this story, we all felt thankful for Terry's offer about the rent. 3 years ago, this whole thing happened, and now Terry owned our house but was letting us rent it. He even offered to show the documents to prove it and said he could rent it to any of our family members for a good price. The funeral went smoothly, and we moved into a 3-bedroom apartment, Terry suggested. He mentioned we'd probably move back into our house soon. I was curious why he thought that, and so was Roger, who came over to hear more. I was thinking about asking them to leave, but then Terry came up with a different idea. 3 days later, we went back to the house, saying we forgot some things. Terry was with us, and my mother-in-law made us tea and snacks, but not very happily. "How do you find living here?" Roger casually asked his grandfather, who happily said it was great. Really? Do you ever hear weird noises like on the stairs or in the bathroom? Roger then acted scared and talked about how he thought he saw someone on the stairs when we weren't home, but there was nobody there. My mother-in-law said that was silly, but at that moment, Roger and Terry acted as if they heard something upstairs. Martha, who was quiet because she was sad about her divorce, didn't say anything. Let's stop talking about creepy things. I didn't hear anything, she said. Roger and Terry quickly left with us. Outside, my in-laws looked really scared. In the car, we all laughed. Terry had used the ghost story Roger made up as a sort of punishment for how they treated Keith. Terry was upset about how they were ready to move into Keith's house without caring about him. It seemed like the more Terry and Roger talked about ghosts, the more my in-laws started to believe the house was haunted by actual ghosts. They got so scared, they eventually moved out. Terry helped them find another place to live that was affordable. That was just business, he said, clearly pleased with himself. We all thought he did great. Martha, who had to start working again after her divorce, was now facing real-life challenges on her own. It was a big change for everyone now that they had to look after themselves. In the end, we went back to living in the house that Keith and I originally bought. We can't own it again, but we're staying there, paying just $400 each month. The brother-in-law and his 2 kids are visiting more now. Martha seems to want to reunite with him, but he's not interested at the moment. Terry visits us once a month, pretending it's to collect the rent. But really, it's on the day Keith passed away. After we honor Keith's memory, we all have dinner together. Terry even takes the time to listen to Roger, who's in high school now, talk about what's on his mind. Roger and I find a special happiness in the stories Terry shares about Keith's school days during these dinners. Many of these stories are new to us and show sides of Keith we hadn't seen before. I like to think Keith enjoys these moments with us, joking around like he used to.